Earlier this year, we reported on research that showed something rather surprising, that a handful of genes were implicated in a wide range of debilitating neurological conditions, including schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, autism and ADHD. It wasn't just a surprising finding, it was controversial too, sparking a row about the genetic basis of mental illness. Well, that controversy is about to be reignited because the team responsible, based at Cardiff University, have won an award and more than £5 million to take their research further, combining the basic genetics with brain imaging, stem cell research and animal models. As our science correspondent Tom Fielden reports, the goal is to build a better understanding of the biological basis of brain function and mental illness.
So this animal he's gone to the long black panel first and then swam to the short panel where the platform is.
Dr. Julie Dumont is using a water maze in the basement of Cardiff University's Behavioural Neuroscience Laboratory to study rats' ability to navigate and to build and remember mental models of the world around them.
So they have to learn either that the platform is at the short black panels here or the long black panels.
The rats have been bred to express a suite of gene variants associated with a number of serious psychological conditions in humans, including schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, autism and ADHD. Researchers can't measure these conditions directly in animals, but they are also known to have an impact on spatial awareness and memory, providing scientists with an animal proxy model to study the genetics underpinning these serious mental disorders.
These are exciting times for psychiatry and neuroscience because we're in the midst of a revolution.
The behavioural geneticist Professor Lawrence Wilkinson, who argues that by building on our growing understanding of the basic genetics underpinning brain function, with insights from imaging studies, stem cell research and animal models, we're finally beginning to get a better understanding of the biological basis of mental illness.
The revolution is going from descriptions of conditions such as autism, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, which are strictly driven by symptoms, into a more deeper understanding of the biology that underlies these conditions.
Right, so I'm just putting this on the microscope.
An important element in this new biological model of brain function and mental illness comes from an analysis of neural cellular activity.
So we're looking at clumps of undifferentiated stem cells.
Advances in stem cell technology have made it possible for the first time for cell biologists like Professor Adrian Harwood to study the development of acute mental disorders like schizophrenia in neurons in a dish.
The genes that we're looking at cause changes in proteins, and proteins cause changes in cell behaviour. So to understand, what the genes are doing, we really need to understand what they're doing in the context of the cell. And so to try and understand these issues of mental health and psychiatric conditions in the absence of understanding what occurs in the cell is actually going to be incredibly difficult.
But not everyone's impressed with this new biological model of mental illness.
The problem is that we're relying very heavily on a very reductionist way of looking at what the brain does. The brain doesn't produce behaviours. The brain is the organ we happen to use to make sense of the world.
Peter Kinderman is the Professor of Clinical Psychology at the University of Liverpool.
Our brains must respond to events. Every single thought that you have ever had has involved a neurochemical process. But to say that those biochemical changes are the driving force, the causes, the secret, the key that unlocks the system, I think is taking the interpretation too far. To say that suicide is caused by a deficit in serotonin is kind of crazy.
But if neuroscience has been guilty of over-claiming and even oversimplifying in the past, Professor Mike Owen, who leads the Cardiff Define Consortium, says we're likely to need the insights from both biological and psychological approaches to mental illness if we're going to develop better treatments for a range of debilitating conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder and autism.
It's not just the brain, it's the mind as well, and I think there will be both brain-based approaches and mind-based approaches in the future. But, we have to accept that understanding the biology, the neuroscience, is going to be a prerequisite to making progress. But it'll be necessary, but I don't think it'll be sufficient.